How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks. I'm your host, Dylan Backer, and as usual, I'm joined by my brother and co-host, Justin Backer. And tonight, the New York Knicks capped off November with a W, winning yet again, this time against the Detroit Pistons by a final score of 118 to 112. Now, the Pistons came into this game having lost 15 consecutive games. This now makes it 16 with the Knicks beating them tonight. You really felt like that the Knicks should have won by a lot more than 6 points. Kind of a bittersweet victory, if you will, but a win is a win. But we'll get into all those types of things later on in this episode. But without further ado, I'm just going to pass this off to Justin. He's going to give us the game recap and some of his biggest takeaways from this victory.
Yeah, what a messy win. That's really the only way I can describe it. Obviously, like you said, the Pistons suck. They came into this game losers of 14 straight, now 15 straight. So you really felt like the Knicks should have just blown them out of the water. That did not happen. It looked like it was going to happen in the first quarter. First quarter, the Knicks went up big. I believe they went up by as much as 16. Jalen Brunson had like 17 points himself in the first quarter. I mean, you felt like you were just in for a really easy win, a smooth sailing ship, if you will. But we did not get that. The Pistons clawed all the way back. You could tell that were playing with a little bit of motivation. They wanted to win badly. This team is due for a win, man. I mean, they're 2-17 on the season. You could tell that they were really, really trying to get a win here. And thankfully, we're not talking about a terrible loss because that would have sucked, especially considering that Jalen Brunson dropped 42 points in this game. I'll get to him in a second, but thankfully the Knicks won. Kind of a messy win. It's not the greatest win, but a win is a win. I'm not going to sit here and complain, but some things do need to be tightened up. The Knicks defense in this one especially was not great. In my opinion, the only reason the Knicks won this game is because the Detroit Pistons turned the ball over 20 times. Yes, 20 times. So I really think that's the only reason the Knicks won this game. The defense was just not great. The Pistons shot 53% from the field and 43% from three. I mean, there were some plays that, things were just, it was just open shot after open shot for the Pistons. I don't know, what was really going on with that, but thankfully the Knicks offense was just too much. So talking about a win, some key players. I'll get to Jalen Brunson last. Actually, I'm going to save him for last. I want to talk about Randall first. 29, 10, and 8 for him. 12 of 21 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3. Just a really productive game from him. He actually had some clutch shots too in the fourth quarter late in the game, which, obviously we're not accustomed to seeing that. Randall's one of the least clutch players in the NBA, as we all know. So nice to see him hit some clutch buckets. I thought that was pretty cool. Dante DiVincenzo was a big reason the Knicks did not end up losing this game. In the fourth quarter, he hit 3 or 4 threes. I don't know the exact number. I know it's 3 or 4, but he hit a couple really big threes in the fourth quarter that kind of helped the Knicks kind of pull away a little bit. So, yeah, obviously they didn't pull away. They only won this game by 6 points, but gave them some breathing room. You felt comfortable that the Knicks were going to pull this off. Just 5 points for him in only 19 minutes. He was 2 for 10 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. Just unproductive night for him. It happens. Oh well. Not. RJ Barrett, another kind of weird game. Only 15 points, 5 of 12 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. But one more person I want to talk about before I get to Brunson. Quentin Grimes. I don't want to be negative because the Knicks won, but 0 points for Quentin Grimes again. He only played 16 minutes in this one. 0 for 5 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3-point range. His defense wasn't great either. I think he's only scored 12 points combined. But I did see a stat after the game that, in his last 5 games, you've got a couple games where he put up a donut and didn't even score. You got like 2 games where he put 3 points up and you have a 6-point game. That's it. That's all you've got out of Quentin Grimes in the last 5 games. At all, me and you have said it all season long that we think DiVincenzo should be starting over him. At this point, I really don't see why Grimes is still starting at all. I mean, 12 points in 5 games. It's just, that's the kind of production he's been giving the Knicks all season. This isn't just a cold streak. This is the kind of, it really sucks to see. I think maybe we were too high on breakout candidate. A lot of other Knicks fans probably did too. Maybe that was premature because, what I was expecting at all. He has taken a massive step back, and it's beginning to hurt the team a little bit. You can see it in the offensive flow or lack of flow, I should say. Him being out there is kind of hurting the team a little bit. Like I said, he only played 16 minutes in this game. I think Tom Thibodeau is starting to see that as well. Josh Hart had 32 minutes off the bench. Dante DiVincenzo had 23 minutes off the bench. And Emmanuel quickly had 19 minutes off the bench. All three of those guys played more minutes than Quentin Grimes and they came off the bench. I mean, and that's not the first time that that's happened either. That's kind of starting to become a trend a little bit. Grimes kind of being phased out with each passing game. And honestly, for good reason. He's not providing the Knicks really anything. Today, he didn't provide them anything at all. He didn't score at all. He had 1 rebound, 0 assists. I mean, if he didn't have that 1 rebound, he might have had a Tony Snell game. If for those who don't know what a Tony Snell game is, it's just straight zeros, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So, he was very close to one of those, but I don't know. It's honestly, it's concerning now. I tried to be optimistic with him, in the past, in the beginning of the season when he started out slow and, we started talking about, DiVincenzo this, DiVincenzo that. I tried to be optimistic and say, okay, you got to give it some time with Grimes, but at this point, I don't think it's worth the wait anymore. He's not providing the Knicks anything, and I don't think he will. So, I don't know if he's gonna if Tom Thibodeau's gonna make the change to put DiVincenzo or even quickly in the starting lineup. I don't think he'll do quickly, but if he's ever gonna make the change to put one of those guys in the starting lineup over Grimes, I think it needs to happen now. Obviously I've been leaning in that direction, but at this point I'm not really, I'm against keeping him in the starting lineup. I'm not for keeping him there and trying to work it out with him and whatnot. I think maybe he was just. I overrated him, to be honest, and I think a lot of other Knicks fans did too. That truth. Anyways, enough negative stuff. Let's talk about Jalen Brunson. He was awesome in this game. 42 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds. He was 13 for 24 from the field, 7 to 12 from 3. Man, he just put on another clinic. That's what he does. He had a great month of November. This is the last game of November for the Knicks. He capped it off. He capped off a really great month. In this month, he averaged 26 points a game, 49% from the field, 49% from 3, 85% from the line. He's going to be in contention for Player of the Month. I don't know if he'll win it, but he'll definitely be a nominee. I mean, this is the Brunson that we've become accustomed to knowing. So, glad to have him back after, kind of a shaky start to the season. It seems like he's fully arrived and he's ready for an all-star campaign. At this point, I don't see how he's not an all-star if he continues to play like that. So really great to see. Yeah, other than that, I really don't have much else to add. I'm just glad the Knicks somehow found a way to win this game. I really thought they were going to lose this game, to be honest. I thought we were going to come on here and talk about, a crushing defeat really to a terrible team. Like I said, the Pistons, this is now 15 games in a row that they've lost. The Knicks have beat the Pistons 13 times in a row, dating back to however long that is. That's a long time. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to add. I'm just glad we're talking about a win and a nice Jalen Brunson masterclass, if you will. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to touch on Brunson first because 42 points, man. I mean, the guy, like you said, he just had a phenomenal November, kind of a rocky October. November was absurd. I mean, every game that you were getting, he only had 12 points, I believe. He was still impactful in the ball movement. He had 7 assists in that game. Tonight, he had 8 assists. I mean, it's not like he's just scoring. No, he's moving the ball well. He's being aggressive on defense as well, which I think is something a lot of people need to kind of realize. I've mentioned it once before, but I'll mention it again. His defense has definitely been a lot more improved this year. He's playing with more physicality, and he's attacking the glass as well, going for rebounds more often too, which is something you really love to see out of, especially a small point guard. Because Brunson's, he's not a big point guard. Let's just be honest. He's not a big point guard. He's built, but he's not, tall or anything like that. He's, just a small point guard who likes to create from the perimeter. But he's a guy that can create really almost anywhere. I say the perimeter, but he basically can create almost anywhere, even in the paint, mid range, pretty much anywhere on the court, which is just a big luxury to have. I can sit here all day and talk good things about Brunson. But I really want to get onto the Quentin Grimes thing you mentioned, man, because, man, he has been rough to watch. Tonight, just, it was basically a dud for him again. I mean, 0 points. He was a -2 on the night, plus minus. I know -2 is not the worst mark I've ever seen, but, if you have 0 points and you're a -2, then you're clearly just out there running cardio at that point. So, it's pretty disappointing. I mean, I don't know really what else to say about it because, as you alluded to before, you and I talked very, very highly about Grimes leading into the season. We thought that he was going to be a breakout candidate. We thought he was going to have a much better season, especially since, he had played with these guys last year. It's not like he's running with a different unit. He played with these guys almost all of last season. This is the same exact starting 5 he played with. So you would think that he would get a little bit more, confident, a little bit more involved in the offense. No, I'm seeing the complete opposite. And it's so, like I said, it's just disappointing. We have DiVincenzo, thankfully, to kind of, back that up a little bit. But at this point, I think DiVincenzo's going to take his spot. I really think it's time to make that move. We've kind of been preaching for this to happen pretty much for the past 2 weeks. I'm really pushing it now. I mean, 0 points against the Detroit Pistons? It's a little disappointing. Not even a little disappointing. It is massively disappointing. And like you said too, it's kind of a shame because 16 minutes and just 6 months ago against Miami in the playoffs, Tom Thibodeau played him 48 minutes in an elimination game, and he played well in that game. And now, he's seeing the court a lot less. He's being less involved on both sides of the ball. I mean, it's unfortunate to watch. And I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed and hope that Quentin Grimes can really start to turn around with a new month here coming up. We're entering December now. Hopefully, he can get a little bit more involved and kind of provide some positive value to the Knicks. But seeing anything out of him, I'm really not seeing anything, and it's it's upsetting. It's really upsetting. Like I'm kind of stumbling over my words here because I really thought that Grimes was gonna be a breakout candidate. I really did. I thought he was going to be someone that could get his scoring average up to close to 15 points a game, even used to play under this system. And I'm seeing a backwards trajectory, and it's really upsetting. It's really upsetting. I don't know if it's just, a year three slump, if you want to call it that, or, if you want to call it technically a sophomore slump since last year was really the first real taste of action he got, then fine. But I mean, you can't keep running him out there, man. I'm sorry, but you cannot keep starting him. You just can't do it. I'm sorry to say it, but you can't do it. You got to put DiVincenzo in the starting lineup. I really think it's time. And sure, the Knicks had a great month in November. They went 9-5 in November. Now they're 11-7 on the season. Fantastic. I love that. I'm glad that the Knicks are still winning ball games. But I really think if you make the switch, then the winning will get even better. And I think you'll see a lot less of these like sloppy quarters and stuff they had. Because tonight, for example, the second quarter, the Knicks got outscored 37-23. 37-23 to the Detroit Pistons. One of the worst, not even one of the worst, the worst team in the NBA. That's not good at all. The fact that this game was a dogfight is pretty upsetting. I'm not going to, dwell on that too much. I don't want to be too negative because at the end of the day, they did win this game and Jalen Brunson put on a masterclass and Julius Randle had a fantastic game too. I'm not going to sit here and ignore that as well. Julius Randle and Brunson both played fantastic, which is great. I'm glad that they did that. But there are so many things that need to get touched on, not even just with the team in general, but I really think you got to start making some changes. I really do. I understand that maybe you don't want to mess with things too much just because they are in fact winning. They are 11-7. They do have a winning record. They're winning games, all this good stuff. But I think they could be so much better if they just make a change, like such as moving Quentin Grimes to the bench and putting DiVincenzo in the starting five. I mean, DiVincenzo closed the game tonight, and you saw how impactful he was down the stretch. I mean, those threes he hit in the fourth quarter is essentially why we were able to win the game. He pretty much prevented Detroit from really making any sort of comeback. So I really think you gotta do it. I really do. If he doesn't do it, if Tom Thibodeau doesn't make the move, it is what it is. At the end of the day, the Knicks are still winning games, and I don't think that's going to necessarily stop if you keep starting Quentin Grimes. But I think if you make the change, then they're going to do a lot better. That's just what I think. I don't want to ramble on too much, though, about this one. This game kind of annoyed me, not going to lie, but I am happy they won the game. I'm not going to sit here and not be, happy that they won the game. I am happy they won, but I do think this could have been a much better game than how it went. But I'm just going to pass it back to Justin if he's got anything else he wants to add. And they got another game tomorrow night against the Toronto Raptors, or, for those watching this will be up in the morning. So tonight against the Toronto Raptors, a back-to-back. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, obviously this game kind of was weird and annoying. Like you said, it's the Detroit Pistons and the Knicks kind of played down to their level. I talked about this last episode. I said, this feels like a bit of a trap game and that, the Knicks might play down to their competition, and I really don't want them to do that. They did that, which I knew they would do all along. And, I'm just glad, like you said, I'm glad we're talking about a win and not a loss. But anyway, moving on to tomorrow, or, when you guys see this tonight, they play the Raptors. They've struggled with the Raptors in the past, to be honest. The Knicks have. The Raptors have a lot of length and size defensively. They have a lot of versatility. You have like Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, guys like that. Just big wings that have a lot of versatility and just defensive capabilities that the Knicks really can't do much about. The Knicks have a short point guard in Jalen Brunson who struggles against teams that have a lot of length. Like we saw against the Clippers, against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, he only had, I believe, like 7 points in that game. He was abysmal in that game. Um, I don't want to sit here and say I'm worried about tomorrow because I think the Knicks are better than the Raptors. But, considering that they didn't get any rest and none of the starters got any rest in this one because this was a close game, now they have to play a tough Toronto Raptors team tomorrow. Um, I'm not feeling great about this one, to be honest. I'm not feeling great about this Raptors game coming up, but, you know, maybe they'll prove me wrong and they'll come out tomorrow with a lot of energy and they'll come out with a win. That's what I'm hoping for. The Raptors kind of scare me a little bit. But they're not a great matchup for the Knicks. Like I said, they struggle with teams with length and stuff like that. I feel like they're going to make Julius uncomfortable. They're going to make Jalen Brunson uncomfortable. You're probably going to need a big game out of RJ Barrett because we really haven't had that yet since he's come back from, a little migraine spell that he had. He missed like 3 or 4 games with a migraine. He's come back and he's just kind of been shaky. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been, what we saw the first 6 or 7 or 8 games, whatever, where he was averaging like 22 points, shooting 50% from 3, all that stuff. We haven't really seen that since he's come back. If the Knicks are going to win tomorrow, I think they're going to need a big game out of RJ. I really do. Yeah, and they're going to need Quentin Grimes to score more than 0 points. If he's obviously going to need him to score more than 0 points because at this point he's just running around. Like you said, he's just doing cardio. But I don't really have much else to say, so I guess I'll give it to you for your final thoughts.
Yeah, the game against the Raptors tonight. Well, for you guys tonight, we're recording this, the day of the Pistons game. But regardless, it's gonna be an interesting game against Toronto. I really do. It's the first time they're seeing the Raptors this season. And the Raptors are not terrible of a team. They're kind of like mediocre, if you will. I don't know their exact record, but I know they have like around like 8 or 9 wins on the season. So they're not terrible, but the Knicks are definitely still better than them regardless. So the Knicks should be able to win this game. But like you said, they weren't able to rest any of the guys because they played a dogfight against the worst team in the NBA. And now they have to go on a back-to-back the following day and play, a tough Raptors team, a team that has, like you said, it's a tough matchup. They have a lot of size, they have good defenders like OG Anunoby, they have, some scores like Pascal Siakam. They're not an easy out. And I definitely agree they need a big game out of RJ Barrett, and I also think they need a big game out of Emmanuel Quickly. I really do. I think they need a big game out of him. Quickly was quiet tonight. He only had 5 points against Detroit. I really think they need him to get a bounce back game and have a really big game against Toronto. I really do, because like you said, Jalen Brunson does tend to struggle a little bit against teams with size. We kind of saw that against Minnesota. Even though he had a good first quarter against Minnesota, you didn't really see much else after that. So, teams with size kind of know how to attack Brunson a little bit. They know how to adjust quickly. So therefore, you need some bigger games out of your guys that are stronger and bigger, such as RJ Barrett. And it sounds kind of outlandish to say it, but Emmanuel Quickly is a very strong guy at this point, and I really have confidence that he can use that to kind of create some better shots for himself against this Raptors team. But all in all, we'll just have to see what happens. But I really think we need some big games out of that, especially RJ Barrett. I really want to see him bounce back because, like you said, we've yet to see it happen since he came back from the migraines. I mean, tonight he went 5 of 12 from the field and 1 of 6 from 3. I mean, that's not really going to cut it. On the positive side, he's still hitting his free throws. So maybe he's just in the shooting slump. I don't really know what it is. I don't know if the slump would have came even if he didn't have these migraines. We'll really never know that answer, but I just want to see him bounce back. RJ was playing so well to start the season, very, very well, and he's kind of slowed down a little bit. I haven't seen, it's not like the worst thing I've seen from him. I've seen worse play from RJ Barrett, trust me. I've seen it much worse from him, but I want to see better than what I saw tonight against Detroit and what I've been seeing for the past 4 or 5 games or so. That's really all I asked for. It's not really a tough ask, but it is also a tough ask at the same time because, like I mentioned before, the Raptors are not an easy out. But regardless, I do think this is a good point to wrap this episode up. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your guys' support. You can check out the audio version of this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating on those. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, of course, this YouTube page that you're watching the video on. You can follow our personal X accounts. They're above our heads. We'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.